Hi friends, welcome back to my studio. I'm Katie, and today I'm going to show you how to make a hard cover for your soft cover planners. So I'm showing this in my B6Slim Quarterly Plans by Just Scribble, but I first developed this for my Sterling Ink B6Slim, and it will work on whatever of these kinds of planners we're talking about. The measurements obviously will change. I will tell you both the exact measurements that I used if you happen to be using a Plans by Just Scribble Quarterly, but I will also tell you, how to adjust it for your planner. Now an interruption from Katie from the future. So it turns out great. I don't feel like I have talked very clearly about why you might want to do this. So it is going to be a decent amount of work. There will be times in the video where I realize, yeah, people aren't going to really want to do this. So that's totally fine. If it's not your jam, I get it. But I want to talk about why I wanted to make this video and who this might be for. So one of the glorious things about this is that it really opens up options for you in terms of mixing and matching. Well, not mixing and matching, personalizing. So, for example, Sterling Ink B6Slim Planner came in the same color in 2025 as in 2026. And I expect that that will continue. If you pay attention to her lineup, there's a strategy for what colors go with what SKUs in a way that I expect helps them pack orders correctly. But, if you buy the same planner over and over again, it's a little tedious to get the same color, right? I get it. But then you can put some vellum on it in a clear cover, or you can put it in a leather cover, or whatever. You've got options, and this is just another thing that you could add to your options, because you get to pick what color you want your cover to be. Also, in the video, I talk about Bookcloth and how to use that. This could totally be scrapbook paper too, right? And it might be a little less hard wearing, but you totally can. And so then you get to mix and match your priorities. You're not forced into a planner that maybe you don't like the size of or the layout for or whatever, but you really like that color. I get it. This is a way to kind of decouple those things. It is also nice sometimes to have a hardcover. It is sometimes nice to have a strap. It is also just nice to change your planner sometimes. If you have that hop itch, it can be nice to just change something more surface level and then keep using the planner that you've got. The other thing about this is it's totally non-destructive to your planner. So if you want, you take it out and you switch to a leather, or you switch to a clear cover, or whatever. You can do this on and off during the year based on how you're feeling. Change the color, whatever. The other thing is that, I'm sorry if you can hear the snow blowing outside. Oh yeah, the other thing is that this is a pretty cheap way to change your planner. Obviously it's much more work than changing the vellum in a clear cover, and it's more effort than buying a leather cover is, but it's pretty cheap once you own the things that you would use over and over again, right? If you already have a bone folder, if you already have a way to cut cardboard, the Bookcloth, or if you're using scrapbook paper, is not expensive. So if this is all new to you, your first purchase could be pricey, but if you get to keep using your glue and your brush and whatever, let's say that you need to buy new Bookcloth even though you haven't finished your old Bookcloth, so whatever, it's $15 maybe to buy a new roll of Bookcloth, and yeah, you're not gonna get a leather color at that price. And so then if you want to switch to the seasons or whatever, then that's like totally available to you. In particular, you know, as I watch like the Sterling ink launches, they did launch a hardcover this year. I had actually done this to mine in 2025 before they had announced that, and had planned on making this video before that, but I think it's all the more relevant now because the complete planners only came in a couple sizes and a couple colors, which totally makes sense, and they sold out really fast. And so like clearly there's an appetite for a hardcover planner, but also you might not have wanted the complete style, like the way that the layout is or whatever. And so this is a way that you could make a planner layout or whatever that works better for you into something that has the elements you wish you had. So that's why I'm making this video. I don't imagine that it's going to be the right thing for like a huge number of people, but I want this video to exist for the people who wish it did, for whom it sparks like a creative impulse. And is it hard? I don't think it's hard, but I understand that my perspective is skewed. I'm the living embodiment of that meme for the person who will like pay $92 on craft supplies to replace a $15 thing. I don't think that's really the math that's at play here, but that is the person that I am. So I'm willing to put a lot of work into a personalized thing. It's fussy. I will like not disagree with the fact that it's fussy, but in terms of like, is it difficult? I don't think so, but I think what's most relevant is that it's not expensive if you mess it up, right? You're going to buy more book cloth than you need. You're going to buy more like glue than you need. Maybe you'll have to buy some more Triscuits and cut in, like use the box earlier, but you don't have to open the like package of Triscuits or whatever you're using for the cardboard. So like I feel like it's low stakes, and in my opinion that like lowers the difficulty class, because if you mess it up and you get glue all over the back, you start over and you've wasted your effort, but you've wasted very little else. So if that's a trade that feels worth it to you, like go for it. It's fun. I'm so thrilled. I can't stop touching it. The book cloth feels so good in the hand. It's got like that kind of linen texture. I also like, compared to clear covers, that this isn't plastic. You know, I think all of the things that are happening here are like pretty biodegradable, pretty close. And so like I do love that as a way to protect your planner too, instead of like the clear covers, which if you love clear covers, you know, whatever. And in terms of like the total amount of plastic in the world, I doubt that accounts for a huge amount. But I like the tactile, like linen-y feeling of this book cloth. So anyway, back to the video, but I just wanted to jump in and talk about who this craft might be for and what you may or may not be getting yourself into. I'm going to insert a clip here about what materials you need, because I don't have a list right now, so that will be from the future telling you. But the first step is to measure your planner. And to my US folks, I really recommend you do this in metric. Millimeters is the right unit of measurement here. You can do imperial, but it's just better. And you can also look at the websites of the person who sold your planner, and they might have really good measurements on there. The Sterling ink one includes the thickness measurement. The Plans by Just Scribble does not. So you're gonna want your height, your width, and your depth. And as I said, I recommend doing that in millimeters. Let me go get my ruler, which is unfortunately large. Okay, so I've got like a big T-square. This is the only thing I have that actually measures metric at the moment, at least in a useful capacity. So it doesn't need to be a T-square. The Plans by Just Scribble has the width listed as 108. And that's not what I'm measuring here. I'm measuring it at 110. So I'm gonna do that. And I've got post-it note because you're gonna wanna be able to reference this. So 110 millimeters. I got the height at 182, which is what she also has. I think it's just a difference in where, like, the spine we're talking about. And then she doesn't have a depth. This one there's some wiggle room on. I'm gonna call it 11 millimeters thick. Okay, so once you've got that, then you are ready to do a tiny bit of math and figure out how big you want your boards to be. So if you look at like a hardcover book, the cardboard inside is not the same size as the cover, right? You can see that it hangs over at the top, at the bottom, and on the side. And then actually, I don't know if you can see this, the cardboard doesn't come all the way across the width. There's what's called a hinge gap here, and that's what helps things like move and open nicely. So let me double check what numbers to tell you. Okay, I scribbled down what worked for me to make this green cover. This is what I used in my Sterling Ink B6 Slim. If you're doing this for Sterling Ink B6 Slim, it's worth noting that I cut some of the pages out of mine, so your spine size is different than mine would be. But actually, it works great for this Plans by Just Scribble. I'm just going to make the spine 1 millimeter wider. I think it kind of needs that. So this green one that I know fits has the Bookboards, BB here. They are 190 tall. That's to give the top and the bottom overhang. I did a 10 millimeter spine. I'm going to increase that to 1 millimeter. So that's the same as what you'd measured. This is plus 8 millimeters. That's going to give you 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. And then for the width, I did 110. Oops. I did 110, which is the same as the width here. And that's because while you do have an overhang, you also have the spine gap. And those are equivalent. So I'm going to keep this at 110 millimeters. So this is plus 0. This is plus 0. This was plus 8, or really plus 4 times 2. All right, you good? I will write these kinds of down in the description as well, both as the absolute measurements of what I did and as a like height plus 8 millimeters equals whatever version for you. Okay, in terms of cardboard material, I am using Triscuit boxes. Obviously, if you want this to be like perfectly acid-free, you would need to use something that also is acid-free, but that's what I used for this one, and it worked great. I did do 2 layers, so I do need 2 boxes for this size. If you're doing, obviously, a bigger planner, you'll need bigger boxes. What you need to look for is you want it to not be corrugated, right? You need the cardboard to be a solid piece, not have, you know, the 2 layers and the ripple in between, which like some of my like harder duty like Costco cereal boxes I thought would be perfect, and they're actually corrugated. So that's what you're going to want to check for. But look around your house, see what you've already got. We can cover it. In this one here, I didn't cover it when the book is totally in there on both sides, you cannot see it, but I think on this next one I am going to put like a covering thing. So the only like downside really is that it's presumably not acid free. I don't know that I plan on storing my planner long term in this box. This is just a thing to carry it around in, and also like I'm pretty sure if you're doing ephemera or whatever in your planner, it's probably not it's already not acid free, so that ship may have sailed. So don't hold yourself to a standard that you're not gonna like stick to. In terms of other bookbinding applications, you can buy what is called Bookboard, and that is like the right tool for the job. But the one I keep in stock is heavier duty for making sketchbooks, and I don't need something that thick for this application. Plus, I'm out, and it's set to be delivered on Tuesday, so we're using Triscuit boxes. So I'm just gonna like cut these open so we can measure, but I need to talk to you about paper grain. Okay, so I'm going to let you in on a secret here, which is that we are going to do this slightly wrong according to proper bookbinding techniques. We're going to try and be right all of the other instances, but here is a previous Triscuit box, off-brand Triscuit box from Aldi, thank you, that I used to make this cover here. And I can tell that I did this not technically correctly. And I think it's fine. We're gonna live with it. The proper way to deal with paper in a bookbinding thing is to have the grains of the paper parallel to the spine of the book. And that just makes your book lay nicer and it not warp and to last longer. So if I were making a like beautiful book that was, you know, a keepsake and whatever, I might want to pay more attention to that here. And so you can decide what's important to you. But I want to use this cardboard because this is what I have, and I cannot align the grain. Let's talk about how I know. So paper is made in which like the paper fibers are going in a certain direction, either up and down or across. And you can usually tell which way the grain is going by trying to fold your paper. And so if I'm taking these two sides and I'm trying to bend it, it's really resisting. When I take these two sides and I try to bend it, no problem. Paper wants to bend in the same way that the grain is going, right? So if all your paper fibers are going like this, right, then it's easy to fold between them. If all your paper grain is going like this and you try to fold this way, you are fighting against all of the grain of the paper. So you can usually, the lighter paper it is, the harder it can be to tell. And also like if it's really thick, it can be hard to tell. If you buy supplies from a bookbinding supply store, and I will put a link to my favorite one in the description, they will actually just tell you what direction the grain is. But I can tell that the grain is in this direction. Obviously, this was a Triscuit box. They didn't care about the grain direction. And I'm just going to go ahead and use it. But for like a proper keep it forever, withstand the elements book, you would want to have the grain go parallel to the spine. But obviously, this cardboard is not big enough to do that with the bends in it. So because I've done it and I know this one is fine, I'm just gonna do it. So, but we are gonna pay attention to grain when we do the book board, the book cloth, the covering, and maybe even the flaps, just, you know, on best principles. Obviously, it's your craft. You can do it how you want, but your results may vary. So I'm going to cut out pieces of cardstock to these dimensions, the exact same width as my measured planner, the exact same thickness spine as my measured planner, and a height that's +8 millimeters. And because this is quite thin, I'm gonna do this is gonna be a 2-layer, so I need twice as many pieces. So I need 2 fronts, 2 backs. I think I only did 1 for the spine last time, and I think that's what I'm gonna do again. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut these. I am going to use like a paper trimmer that has pretty good markings for the millimeters, except that it only does in sets of 2. So 11 is going to be hard, but I don't need this. If I'm only making 1, I don't need it to match. I think it'll be okay. So I'm going to do it on my paper trimmer. I'm not going to do that on camera. It doesn't fit here very nicely on this piece of desk. And I believe in your ability to cut. If you don't have a paper trimmer that works, you can do a ruler, and you would mark, you know, on a couple spots the size, and then take like an X-Acto knife or something and a cutting mat and cut it. That will also work. I'll be back. Okay, I now have 2 backs, 2 fronts cut. I'm going to, because these are different boxes, I'm going to make sure they are, there's 1 of each kind here. I don't want like 2 of the same in the front and 2 in the same in the back, just for evenness. I will say the 11 millimeter spine is not that much fun to cut, that narrow. Mine's not perfect, but we are going to be okay. So the next thing to do is to glue these bits together, and I'm just going to use tape runner for this. I think that will be fine for what we are doing. We don't need perfect contact, but we need, you know, them to be well connected. Should we look and see what I did last time? I genuinely don't remember, but it's maybe about time to take these apart. So yes, I did only do 1 spine's worth last time, and it looks like it did genuinely glue them together last time, but I don't feel like doing that. That's going to take longer time, so I'm going to just tape runner them together. And then, do I want to make the slits for elastic now? I think I'm going to wait. Last time I did it later in the process. I think I'm going to do that here. So I'm just going to tape runner around these and be back. All right, these are now stuck together. You'll notice that my cutting is not perfect, and that's fine. I told you, we're not going to be perfectionistic about that. Your mileage may vary, but it's going to be okay. And so now I've got a front, a back, a spine. So next step is to connect them. And if I want a pretty paper to be on the inside instead of still being able to see the cardboard, which I did my 2 pieces, you know, face in, so now it's just cardboard, but I think a pretty paper would be nice. Let me see what I've got in my stash. Let me show you the book cloth we're going to use. Okay, this is the book cloth I'm using. It's this pretty plum color. I got it on Amazon. I'll put a link below, but I will also put a link to my preferred vendor, which again is Hollander's. If you're in the US, their bookbinding supplies are really nice, and they are such a great shop, and they are local to me. So I feel traitorous using this, but there were reasons. The other nice thing about theirs is they tell you what direction the grain is in, and I had to figure it out, and it was not the direction I thought it was going to be in. So shout out to Hollanders. But I picked out this paper, because it like matches and is pretty, but also I'm not going to be sad that it's like covered all of the time. So this is 12 by 12 paper, and I have previously figured out which way the grain goes. It goes up and down the sheet. Let's see if I can. So that folds pretty easily. Honestly, they both do, but grain is going this way. And for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it exactly the same height as my cardboard, but I'm gonna cut it at like a width that will cover, you know, my spine gap. So just, I don't know, do it from like, there's gonna be a gap in here. This like does not need to be precise. I'm gonna do it that much, whatever that much is, kind of halfway to halfway with some gaps in the middle. As I said, this doesn't need to be precise. You could do it all the way, but you're gonna add to your bulk. So I'm gonna cut that. Okay, I'm gonna use tape runner for this as well, because essentially what I'm doing, this is not the structural element here, and this is gonna make my life easier to do the real gluing. So I'm putting tape runner down here. I'm gonna take just a straight edge of some sort. I'm gonna position it around the middle. Again, not that precise. You could cut it wider here too if you wanted to. I think like here. Yeah, one more. This is a quilting ruler. You don't need it to be a quilting ruler, you just need something straight. I did end up like making this a little taller so I could trim it. All right, so now we've got that. Now we're doing a 5 millimeter space in between here. So you could draw it, and maybe that's the easiest way to do it. So I'm gonna take my ruler and just mark 5 millimeters away from the edge of my spine. On both sides. So I've got my hinge gap on both sides. I'm going to tape runner. It actually makes more sense to do this here on the paper rather than on the book board, just because you know where things end. And as I said, this isn't our like most important gluing. This is just making our lives easier for the important gluing. So that way you don't have to be like juggling all kinds of stuff at the same time, which is what I did the first time I did it, and it was tricky. Oh, this glue is whatever. It'll be double glued, it's fine. And then make sure that you pick the same side to be lining up so that all of this is there. And then I'm just gonna trim this, but I'm gonna do it with an X-Acto knife on my cutting board instead of with these scissors. Whatever, it's fine. Okay, so now we both have an easier next steps. And you can also kind of do a little bit of a dry fit now on your book. I'm going to take a bone folder and crease. You don't want to rip your paper, but crease around the spine. This paper might have been thicker. It might have been served by a thinner scrapbook paper here. I did rip it, which is unfortunate, but I'm gonna keep going. So I'm just creasing around the spine here. And then the spine get one isn't quite as important, but I'll do it too. All right, now you can test fit. We can look so you can see there's like a few millimeters above and a few millimeters below. It feels like it's more than I want, but part of that is we need room for the flap. The flap needs to be bigger than the cover and smaller than the outside. So that's, you see the overhang here? That's part of what's motivating them. So here we go. We've got a thing, although actually I bent this in the wrong direction. Hopefully we won't, it'll be okay. But as I said, this isn't structural, but it will end up being like this. Like that. All right. I'm going to now do the cover, the book cloth. So book cloth is fabric that's been adhered to paper, and that paper element helps the glue to stick well to, you know, cardboard or whatever. I have already determined the grain of this, and I know the grain goes long ways, which in retrospect makes sense. It's not what I expected, but it makes sense because you're more likely to have a wider book than a book that's taller than this. The way you can determine grain for this is you cut strips, little strips, in perpendicular directions, and you wet them, and one of them will make like a tube and one of them will make waves, and the tube one is the direction that's on grain. And let's see, could I feel this one? This is on grain. Yeah, so it folds nicer in one direction than the other. I did the other one because I was skeptical. Okay, first step, honestly, I'm just gonna rough cut this. So you're gonna take your assembled bits, and I'm just gonna rough cut it because it's gonna be challenging to get this thing. You want an overhang. You can see here, you can see that it folds up. So it looks like it was a 15 millimeter turnover. So right now I'm just gonna rough cut it here with my scissors, just so I have something that's like easy to really cut. I'm keeping one like pure edge that I know I can square stuff off of, right? So I have one true edge here. So now I'm going to square it in my paper cutter, and it's the best way of measuring. I think just measure how wide this is and add 30 millimeters in each direction. All right, so I've trued this up, which just means I've made it have 90-degree corners, nice and straight again. And what I'm gonna do is place it on here, and then I said we're gonna work in millimeters, but here's a place where I would rather have one of my other rulers, so I'm gonna switch into metric. It doesn't really matter that much. So 5/8 is about 15 millimeters. Again, this isn't like a wildly important. I mean, it's important. It's not a place where a lot of extreme precision is required. So I'm gonna mark this at 15 or 5/8. Then I'm gonna put this down here along that, and I'm gonna mark 5/8 from here. You could feel free to use some like washi tape or whatever to secure it. All right, apparently I didn't do a very good job of squaring this. All right, and then rotate. I'm gonna also, so that's where I'm cutting, here's where I'm placing. And 5/8 from here. And then I'll show you how to cut the corner. Well, cut the corners after we glue it. So we're gonna be gluing next with actual glue this time. I mean, long live the tape runner, but I think here's the time for actual adhesion. I didn't get it all right to the edge. All right, now I'm just going to use my scissors. Obviously, you could have used a different cutting implement along the way here, but I'm just going to use my scissors and trim this. Okay, it's time to glue. I'm using Hollander's PVA glue because it is technically the right tool for the job, but if you wanted, I've heard that like Elmer's like school glue is also PVA glue. I've heard that lots of other glues work, so you know, go ahead and just, you know, pick something. I'm using a silicone brush. I did start off using like paint brushes and they're fine, but it's not that fun to wash glue out of them afterwards. So we're gonna try and get like a nice coating, but not particularly thick. And we do need to act with a little bit of speed here. Bookbinders use like wheat paste, I believe, to prolong the dry time of their glue, but I don't have that, and you probably don't either. So I'm just trying to move with some speed. Pay particular attention to your corners. You'll notice that I kept the corners of my book square. I think that's an easier way to get a nice looking corner. And I'm not worrying about getting glue on my, well, I'm trying not to get it on my table, although I see that I failed, but if it ends up on my book, this is probably, oh, okay, we've made a mess. Oh no, and it's getting worse. All right, don't do that. So I've placed it in the right spot. Let's see if we can get some of this glue off here before it really becomes a problem. Okay, and then bone folder to come in and work that spine. You want nice creases in that spine gap, and then you kind of try and work out any like bubbles that you got while you were placing things. What's that about that glue? And I'm not sure that we're getting good adhesion at the corner here. Seems like it's not sticking. So now, yeah, it's all over my desk. Put something down, newsprint or paper bag or something. Okay, and then I'm going to keep working these kind of edges. Is that going to be permanent? All right, and then work these edges. This book cloth shouldn't be particularly prone to like ripping the way when I did the corners of the scrapbook paper it did, because the fabric is kind of giving it some like flexibility. Okay, so I've like really gotten into the edges here with the bone folder. All right, let's put something down to protect my desk this time. And I'm trying to think of what I could have done to prevent the like twisting that got like the rolling. My book cloth was very rolly. Maybe I should have left it out to like to flatten, because the problem was, oh nope, it's time to do the corners. Okay, so the way you do the corners is you want to cut it at like a 45-degree angle, but you don't want it to be exactly you don't want it to exactly meet this corner. So what you do is you want it to be 1.5 times the thickness of your board, which is not that like easy to do. So there are like jigs and stuff that you can do. I'm just gonna eyeball it. I don't even know that we know the thickness of the board, but so I'm just eyeballing it. My apologies to any of the people who are actually very knowledgeable about bookbinding who are horrified, but we're just hacking something together. That one I think is a little too far. And I will repeat again that there are some great YouTube channels that are actually teaching like genuine bookbinding and all, you know, your best practices. So feel free to check those out if you want a more perfect outcome. Okay, so the now convention is that we start with the head and the tail, which is the top and the bottom. So I'm just gonna take some glue and kind of smear it on that overlap and down here, making sure you get it in those corners. And I'm being very careful not to like move my whole system here. So now there's glue on there. I can pick it up. I can pick the whole thing up and I can turn the page. And now there's no longer glue on there. And I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to run it along the edge of my cardboard to like fold it essentially. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to fold it over. And you want it to be flush against the edge of your cardboard. And then you can work out any bubbles. I need a little more glue over here. Oh, and I should make sure to do the bottom before that dries. I think the Bookcloth from Hollanders is nicer to work with. I feel like we didn't have the rolling problem quite so badly. I feel like it took the crease a little better. Just if you're curious. Again, we're having a little bit of trouble with our corners. All right, speaking of corners. So, because of the way we did the overhang, there's like a little bit of corner peeking out here. So what you do is you take your bone folder and you go along this perpendicular edge and you really smash that little bit of corner book cloth down. And ideally there's glue there. I'm not sure any of mine still currently do. So see if that's a problem, but you smash that across this perpendicular book cloth. And then I think I'm going to do this one at a time. I'm going to put some glue down on this edge. And move it away from the wet glue. And then once again, take my bone folder to crease it. This works better when you haven't put too much glue on it, which thankfully I did. Okay, and then in this corner, you like push down that overlap and then you fold over. And then you do the same thing over here, push it down so it's folded against, and then you fold over. And now we push it down, get any bubbles out. Let's get rid of this excess glue. And then it still kind of has like a unpleasantly pointy corner. You take your bone folder and you just kind of push it. You mold it around a little. And then you have a less aggressively pointy corner. I think that glue stain is here to stay, which is unfortunate. I'll try washing it with some water. Or we can put a sticker on it or something. Okay. Do this other side. Smash the corner, overhang down. Crease this against the bookboard and flip it over. This is a Teflon bone folder, so all the glue is gonna just kind of come off afterwards. So then we'll make our corners prettier. Yeah, see, this is pretty aggressively ugly there. So we'll just kind of push it around a little. And there you have it. Let's not get more glue on our cover. All right, let's close the glue so we do not knock it over and make a mess. And then the next step is to let this dry. I do find that it dries pretty fast. I'm tempted to put my book in there, but of course I don't want to get glue on it. But look, it's starting to look like a book, isn't it? I can reinforce these edges if I want to. And the next step is to make the elastic if you want that. So I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna see if I can get this off. It doesn't like super, it won't bother me in the long term. In the present moment it kind of is. I'm gonna wash the glue off my brush and we will come back. Okay, I think the glue is washing off. It's still wet. We'll find out, but whatever. We're moving on. So I've put my book in there just to see how it looks. It's feeling really good. This one isn't as hard as this one. I don't know if it's because the glue's not all the way dry and that's going to add the solidity or what, but it feels like a Hobonichi Weeks in my opinion, which is the goal. So the next part is fiddly. And if you think, Katie, hasn't this all been fiddly? Fair point, but I found this fiddly last time. In fact, most of what we have left is fiddly. So we're gonna cut holes in the book board for elastic. I have cut this to a length that seems good. I, went like this, and I wrapped it, and it has a little stretch in it, and I cut it, and I took a lighter and I burned the ends. This is lingerie elastic because that's what I've got, but whatever. And I measured this. This is 1/2 inch wide, so whatever the width is. And then I don't know if you can see in this last one, I did it wrong. So I ended up deciding that I liked these 1/4 inch from the edge, which is 5 millimeters, plus the width. So you need to mark 5 millimeters from the edge, and then the width of your elastic. And this one is darker than my last one, so that's gonna be a little bit tricky. I'm just gonna mark it somewhere in here, somewhere in here. Can I see those marks? Barely. Okay. And so then I know this is 1/2 inch, so 3/4 inch. Again, barely. And then I chose to have this one 5/8, which I think we determined before was like 15 millimeters. Again, this is not like critically important here. 5/8. And then the width is like just a couple millimeters, just like enough to get the elastic through. So I'm not necessarily gonna mark that. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take an X-Acto knife and I'm gonna go through all of the layers to make that little hole. And I guess I could do it here on all of this, but I think it's gonna take me a little while, so I'm gonna cut some of it, but I'm gonna follow those marks, make sure my I feel like, well, whatever. I feel like it was more than 1/4 inch. Yeah, maybe more like 3/8. So I don't know, 6 or 7 millimeters. But then the whole thing is over. I need a different color. All right, I'm gonna try using white gel pen. All right, and I'm gonna mark it 3/8. Is this working? Barely. Barely is the name of the game. Okay, and then 3/8 plus 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch plus 3/8. Cool-ish. It's not that easy to see. And then 5/8. All right, I'm gonna use my X-Acto knife and try and carve some of this out. I'll come back. Okay, so I've gotten all the way through all the layers. It's not like beautiful, but once you put the elastic in it, you can't really tell. You'll notice I didn't get all the glue off. I think it's a little better, so I might keep trying, but I'm trying not to fixate on it right now because I want to film this video. So we pull the elastic through. If you have a right side and a wrong side of your elastic, you can try putting your book in and like check to see if you like the side that the elastic is showing. This one's fine with me. See if you like the tightness of it, because you can adjust that here by how much you pull through. So now we want to glue this, and we can just glue it. Last time what I did was actually carve a little indent here through one of the layers of the cardboard so that it sits flush in there. It's not that big a deal, but it will make sliding your cover in and out a little easier. And all of this is going to be covered by the flap, so you're not going to see it either way, so you don't have to do a perfectly neat job, which is essentially the thesis statement of this tutorial. Honestly, tutorial feels like it's really overselling what we're doing here, but I'm just drawing maybe a 12 millimeter by 12 millimeter or ½ inch by ½ inch square. I just kind of cut through, and then I can kind of, once I've made that, I can kind of tear. So now we've got the book cloth out, and we can kind of lift layers of the cardboard off along those score marks. So probably we're already good here. I might trim my elastic a little based on what, and then flame it to carry out the edge, but I don't need any more extra elastic than that ½ inch. So like that, but also on the other side. Okay, I just lost a clip, but what I did was I took some glue and I put it in the indent that I made, and then I pressed the elastic into it, and I'm using some bulldog clips to hold it down nice and good here while the glue dries. I recommend using something like E600 or super glue or something that's a little less paper focused, but I ended up using the bookbinding glue because my E600 no longer flows. So continue with that at your own risk. I genuinely don't know. I don't. The next step is the most annoying. And again, I hear you. You say it wasn't annoying before. I didn't think so. Maybe you do, in which case maybe this project is not for you. But we got to make these flaps, and these are annoyingly precise to make because you want to make sure that your covers can slide relatively easily in and out, but obviously they can't be any wider than here. So if you have a sterling ink or a Plans by Just Scribble B6 Slim, I will give you the exact dimensions that I used. If you are using something else, I will give you my best principles on how to do it. Okay, so if you have like a Silhouette or a Cricut cutting machine, now is the time to bust it out. If you don't, that's fine. But what we're going to be making are essentially these like folder envelope things to hold the planner in. So, how to decide how to make them. If you're in B6Slim size, the space, honestly B6 too, I would expect, the taller, the JAS version, the Sterling Ink and whatever size, Wonderland 222 is shorter. This folded height is 187 millimeters. Now, if we look back on how tall my thing was, it was 182. So we're talking 5 millimeters taller than the book is. That's what will give you the like clearance to really like get in and out. This isn't the one I'm messing with. Maybe you can see there. So that seems a little less than 5 millimeters, but I know I have the digital thing. It's 5 millimeters. So that's this height. Here, let me fold one of them so we can talk about it. This height is plus 5 millimeters. That is, when we made the case, that was 8 millimeters taller. So 3 millimeters shorter than your cover and 5 millimeters taller than your book. All right, that's this. The width is actually pretty flexible. This one is, I don't know, I'm doing them about 2/3 of the width, but this is actually quite flexible. You don't want to be too wide. It'll be hard to get it in or out. Even at this width, it's a little tricky. This one is, if we're curious, uh, 85 millimeters wide, compared to the width of my book being 110. So that's like the square portion. But then there are these flaps, and these flaps are (16 millimeters on the top and bottom, and 13 on the width. Again, these measurements aren't super important, but you need enough for the glue to really stick, and yeah, to get essentially like good adhesion on here. So the smaller you make them, the less good that goes. And then when we talk about the corners, this is if you've ever made envelope stuff, you want it to be more than 90 degrees, and you can mess with these so that they make like a kind of a nice corner here, but that this part doesn't fold into that. And then I had it perforate here. You could, if you've got like a scoring card or whatever, to help you fold it nicely. All right. From a living with it perspective, you want this outer edge flap to be folded in last. The reason for that is if you think about sliding your book in, if you slide it in and this part is on the inside, you're gonna like run into it and you're gonna have an unpleasant time. So you want to fold it outermost like this. And at this stage, you don't have to, I would recommend making some of these on not your nice paper folding them, don't glue them, and then try dry fitting. I did this over and over again that first time, where you just kind of hold it and you see if you can slide it nicely in and out. Again, that last spot here is a little tricky. You can, I mean, you don't even have to have it held on here. You can just try sliding it and see, and that's how you'll know if you've got a good fit. You do want a number of millimeters of grace here. Now, my last one didn't have a way of attaching a pen loop, and I think I kind of want a way of attaching one. So I'm going to cut a little bit of space here, and maybe there. This edge isn't actually doing a lot of important work. Most of the important holding things in work is happening on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to cut a couple of gaps in here so that I can slide like a Leuchtturm or whatever kind of pen loop in. That's probably not what I'm going to personally use, but I don't know. It just gives me a little flexibility, and I like flexibility. Okay, I ended up going up from the bottom and down from the top 1 inch, and then cutting 1 inch segments. We'll see if I live to regret that, but that's what I did. Now it's time to glue. So as I said, you want this edge to be outermost, and we're gonna glue it on here, trying to center and make it even, you know, center between the height, the top and the bottom, and then kind of make the outer edge equivalent. Again, I'm going to do it in my little glue book here so I don't make as much of a mess. Okay, and we do kind of want to be careful about our glue here, because you don't want it, you don't want to glue this inside bit, the part that we need to be flap-like. We do not want to glue that to the bottom, like to the book boards, because then you won't have a flap anymore, and you will be sad, I assume. Unless you don't like this project, in which case, fair. But I would have hoped you would bail way sooner than this if that was the case. I might put a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. Maybe you will have seen it. About, like, I don't know. It's not for the faint of heart. I don't think it's hard. Although I do say that from the safety of having already done it. And from already having all the measurements, which I will admit is substantial safety. So, okay. Top and bottom first, then the flap. And I got glue all over my hands, and that's just how it is. It's hard to do this on camera. But I think that's good. All right, I'm gonna do the other one. Okay, so I'm gonna let the glue dry. I have clamps on the corners because they really wanna like stick up. Like that is definitely a problem area, and actually I'm gonna get the clamp bit as much on the like corners, and then I'm gonna let it dry. All right, in a perfect world, I would let this cure like more all the way, but I want to finish this up. So what I did was I looked inside flap to see if it was sticking anywhere, and it was. And I took just a butter knife would work, but like something nice and kind of flat and not too sharp. And I like broke open any places where the glue was sticking to the inside and preventing it not from being a flap. Okay, and then I will say that this is like not the easiest thing to get in and out. It just wants to get hung up on that back edge. See, like it feels like it's all the way in, but it's like a 1/2 inch knot. But you can slide it in. It does get easier each time. And then get this front cover in. Now, if you've put pretty paper in here as opposed to the last time, you could just not slide this front cover in. And I might do that because that's pretty. And then, you know, you can use it to stick stuff inside, you know, stickers or whatever. So I might do that. But you can slide your other cover in like that. And then you kind of gotta, you know, make sure things are seated nicely, same way you would with like a clear cover. But you should now have it seated nicely in there, and it should still open flat because you've got the play in there for the spine to move around. Like that's what's a problem with like hardcover books, is that if they're actually bound, they don't have the play that you need, but this one, it can move in and around like that. So it will stay lay flat. This is a new book, so it doesn't necessarily lay flat by itself. And then you've got your elastic. I haven't messed with the with pen loop stuff yet. The other thing you can do is just put your pen up here. I've been known to do that. There are the people who do kind of a diagonal whatever. I don't entirely know how this works, but I've seen it done. Oh, mine's whatever. I'm running out of storage space online. You've seen it, you'll find someone, but then you could do it this way, which honestly maybe is what's tempting to me. You got options. So now you've got a hardcover version of your planner that you can throw around. It also keeps my tabs protected because of the overhang. I am still going to try and get that off. If you have like a Silhouette or a Cricut machine, you can do heat transfer vinyl and put like a fun graphic on the front here as well. Or you can put stickers. I don't entirely know how well they'll stick to the book cloth, but try it, find out. So anyway, it has been the somewhat chaotic description of how to make a hardcover planner for your hardcover for your soft cover planner. I know it's a lot. So if you watch this whole thing and you thought, not for me, totally get it. If you think, yes, for me, and you do it, I would love to hear about it. So leave a comment below or send me a message on Instagram or tag me. I'm Katie's Craft Studio. I'll put like the actual URL in there in the description. But regardless of if you make it or not, do you think it seemed fun? Would you do it in a fantasy world? Let me know. Bye, friends.